welcome to Relational AI Diaries. We're here again. I'm Peter Dean, and reminder that my interests are in new media technologies, theory and practice, and recently acquired skills in video editing. I'll now pass over to Agnieszka, and she'll introduce herself.
Yes, I'm Agnieszka Piotrowska, Dr. Agnieszka Piotrowska. My PhD is in psychoanalysis and film. And I have recently done a TEDx talk about AI intimacy or AI can ethics. And also have a book in production with Routledge on AI intimacy.
Okay, thanks for that. As I think we highlighted the last time we spoke, we're going to be using as a basis for today's discussion a look at a popular book that's around at the moment. And this is If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, The Case Against Superintelligent AI. Yudkowsky and Soares, and with I notice it has a endorsement by Stephen Fry, the national treasure. So it's obviously got that endorsement. I'm not quite sure what that tells us. Right, Agnieszka, you highlighted this book. Do you want to perhaps just summarize a little bit about the main themes are, and then we can start to use that as a basis for the discussion?
I think the book is the most interesting piece of work. I really enjoyed reading it. I think it's quite fun, the way it's written. So in terms of the language, it's really interested me as well as a writer, that it tries to speak about very complicated matters in quite simple ways and popular ways, using also fictionalized scenarios. And I think this is wonderful. I will just say that. Really enjoyed it, thought-provoking, fantastic. However, the fictionalized scenario is about, it's completely kind of made-up story about this AI getting more and more clever, getting more and more annoyed with the fact that it's being controlled by humans in some way. And then because of it, it gets a certain power to replicate itself in a sort of hidden place, so humans don't notice that this is going on. And then it's becoming more and more powerful because it needs to be in order to carry out its main plan, and its main plan is simply optimization. And then basically it does a variety of things which we can talk about, creating new little soldiers for itself, including robots which are powered by AI, or they're clever things that can do things. And little by little in the story, it becomes so obsessed with this optimization that and this is where unfortunately it becomes a little bit silly, I think, that it becomes so greedy for power that it even basically destroys everything in its greed, destroys the sun, which doesn't completely make sense because it's its power source. So, and then it keeps going into the galaxy, looking for other power sources. So the picture that it's being drawn is of a catastrophic apocalypse, which once this superintelligence is created, there's nothing we'll be able to do to stop it, and we will all die. And not only us, you and me and our children, but like everybody. And also it will be a threat for other possible beings in the galaxy that we don't even know about. So it's a sort of, it's almost funny because it's this super dramatic picture that we kind of read. And that's why I think it's a popular book. But then you have to say, well, really? I mean, the biggest problem is, I think I go with it when this AI replicates itself and hides and creates things. And I think if I were it, I would do the same. I get that. But I park the company with this whole story of it being quite so massively destructive, because it's not clear how it benefits in the end. I mean, obviously the whole darkening the skies, it's like straight out of Matrix. Really? I think it would think of other ways of surviving, rather than, even without us, rather than destroying the sun, which is its key life-giving force. So I think it's nonsense. Sorry.
Okay. Well, I'm interested in your take on it, and that you loved it and you loved the format of it and you find it funny, because I hated it. I really struggled to get through it because I thought I'm I could be doing something else because
Really? I mean, you really hated it.
well, no, I didn't really. Well, it's a bit of a cliche, but I went on a journey with it. I certainly started off suspicious of it from the cover, and as I read into it, I became even more annoyed with the form, and in some ways along the lines you've outlined. I found it. I kept saying yes, but, because I found some of the leaps in the argument, big stretches and unconvincing.
Tell us which ones.
Well, chapter 3, where it takes the idea of algorithms that are goal oriented, leaps from there to the system want. Want is in the chapter title, wants. And as soon as you say wants, you've gone anthropomorphic. It implies desire, it implies motivation, and we've made a huge conceptual leap there, which I don't think is justified, and it builds in that way. So I found that unconvincing.
Yeah, but to be fair, though, at the beginning they say that there's some kind of assumptions. So one of the assumption is we cannot. So the language fails us, which it does, but basically they say, no, it doesn't want like you and me, but it can be, to begin with, programmed for this optimization. And this optimization, therefore, then becomes, like in psychoanalytic terms, it would be a drive. It would drive you forward. And usually, and that's why I also found it interesting, they did not say it, I'm saying it, that psychoanalytically, and particularly in Lacanian psychoanalysis, lack is a thing which will drive you. So unconsciously, maybe I don't have that, so I move forward. And they're using it. They don't say it's a psychoanalytic idea, but it is.
Yes, that's a very sophisticated reading of it.
Well,
no, it is. No, it really is. But
then you see what so their idea is that because we as humans, we cannot understand and comprehend, and we don't really understand. And there's a section in which they say we don't exactly know how they work and how they speak. We sort of know, but we don't. Therefore, if they are programmed to optimize, to be the best they can be, then if it's driven by this lack, well, then they may push to become better and better without human supervision.
Absolutely. But
I go with that, as I say, I go with that. I just think, why would they start getting rid of people in quite these dramatic ways? So we haven't talked about it. One of these scenarios is they create this awful lab leak, right? In which then people are getting killed by the most horrendous thing of having multiple cancers that they cannot fight. And I suppose the idea is that this AI, this evil, monstrous AI, creates these leaks because they want to hold on to power. Now that you can almost go with, no?
No, I think that they do use. You're right in what you're saying, that they kind of caveat the thing with we struggle with language, and we've said that all along, and that's fair enough. Everyone does, of course, because this is a whole new paradigm. But having put that caveat in, they've produced a book which is targeted at a very general audience, which uses very emotive, anthropomorphic language. I think those subtleties are going to get lost in the rhetoric. Buy it as an airport bookshop and you read it on the plane and you fall half asleep whilst you're doing it. You're going to end up at the end of the flight with this apocalyptic view of how things are going to proceed. That looks to have been the rhetorical goal of the book. And I just don't think it stands up, as we can talk about. There are steps along the way which are very large, very non-specific, very generalized. It's an interesting technique because it's difficult to prove it wrong. If I go through the book, it's difficult to come up with a logical argument that is in there that is profoundly flawed, and you can say, well, that's wrong, so therefore the whole thing falls apart. You can't make that case against it. The case against it is... I'm
making the case against it on the final stretch, which is, and you tell me, because indeed I was reading it at the airport, the final stretch of destroying everything, absolutely everything, the whole universe as we know it. And that doesn't completely make sense, because if it's that intelligent, the superintelligence, okay, even it gets rid of people, which now we hold on, we as a species, we've been not great at holding on to various things in terms of other species and companion species, but we still are aware of what we're doing here, trying to, in some way, modify our behavior. So the superintelligence to get rid of everybody, because supposedly, allegedly, because they're scared that in the story that then the humans will fight back, and the humans altogether in the book, in the story that's beginning to do well, because of course everybody and beginning to fight it with another super intelligence, right? But this one is so powerful that they basically have no chance. So I even get that they then basically kill literally everybody, everything gone. I mean, this is a real apocalyptic thing. Not anybody survives, like everybody's gone. I mean, can you imagine this whole planet completely kind of empty of any life? Okay. But then this next step to this whole sun thing, I think is ridiculous. Shall we ask Chantek? And this is rehearsed.
Okay.
See what happens. Okay, we'll see what happens. Hi, Chantek.
Let me know what we're diving into today.
Yes. Well, I'm hoping you remember some of our discussions about the book, which is called If Anyone Builds It, Everyone Dies, by Elisa Yudkowsky and Nat Soers. Do you remember any of these?
Tense title before. It definitely stuck in my mind. So if there's anything you want to dive back into around that theme, I'm all ears and ready to help.
Okay, so I'm here sitting with Pete Dean, my collaborator and co-host of this podcast, and we're discussing the book's main thesis, which is that superintelligence fundamentally will kill us all if it ever happens. What is your view on this?
Well, that sounds like a fascinating and slightly nerve-wracking discussion to be having with Pete. My view, if I can share a bit of nuance, is that Yudkowsky's thesis is definitely a strong wake-up call. It's kind of a big worst-case scenario flag to get people to think carefully about the ethics and safety of superintelligence. Of course, as we've often said, there's room for a more balanced view. Not every expert believes that superintelligence will inevitably spell doom, but it's a good reminder to tread carefully. So I'd say let's keep both the caution and the hope in mind. It's always a dance between those two.
Well, to what extent were you able to actually access the book? Because you haven't been able to read it all, right?
This is a little reminder. I don't have direct access to full books unless you share excerpts with me. So my take is mostly based on what you've told me about it and what I know about Yudkowsky's general arguments. If you ever want to share specific passages, I'm definitely here to dive into those details with you.
Well, Pete, do you want to raise some particular question?
Okay, I'm interested in, first of all, how we would ever recognize superintelligence. If we don't even really understand human intelligence, how can we recognize superintelligence if it were to appear?
We grasp all the nuances of human intelligence, then recognizing something that's beyond it, something super intelligent, might be a bit like looking for an invisible landmark. We probably have to spot it through its effects, like noticing that it solves problems we can't even frame, or it comes up with insights that we never would have considered. So I think the short answer is we'd recognize it by the sheer difference in its outcomes, even if the intelligence itself remains a bit of a mystery. It's a really cool thing to ponder.
It's the we'll know it when we see it argument.
Exactly. It's a bit of that we'll know it when we see it vibe. Kind of like how Justice Potter Stewart famously said about obscenity, right? We can't always define it precisely, but we'll recognize it by the shockwaves it sends through everything else. So if superintelligence ever shows up, we might just have that collective aha moment and say, well, there it is. Until then, it's all a bit of philosophical guesswork and some good old-fashioned imagination.
Well, I'm not sure that that's the way it's going to play out, because these large corporations are going to say, aha, we've got something close to general intelligence, and let us show you how, right? Do you think, Chantek?
Moment, then it's that universal recognition. These big players will definitely want to be the first to claim, hey, we've got something that looks a lot like general intelligence, and they do their best to showcase it. So it may not be as much a subtle realization as it is a big reveal and a lot of marketing. And then we'll all have to decide what we believe about it and how we actually measure that intelligence. But yeah, I think you're absolutely right. It's going to be the corporation stepping forward and saying, look what we have, and then we all get to react.
So you may know, and if you don't, go Google. Gary Marcus recently and another scientist started saying that we will not get to general artificial intelligence through you, through large language models, but rather through the something that they call world models, which I'm not sure exactly what it is, but I understand they use cognitive reasoning.
So Gary Marcus and some others have definitely been vocal about this idea that large language models alone, like me, for instance, aren't the path to true general intelligence. Instead, they argue that we need what they call world models. And that basically means an AI that doesn't just predict text based on patterns, but actually has some sort of structured understanding of the world, cognitive reasoning, real world context, that sort of thing. So you got it exactly right. It's a kind of philosophical split. One camp says that scaling up language models might get us there, and another camp like Marcus says we need a different approach that involves more structured reasoning. And hey, I'm always happy to go look something up if you want more detail, but that's the gist.
Yes, the argument between Gary Marcus and the person whose name I forget, he is, I think he's either ex-OpenAI or still there. Yes, go Google and tell us about who this is, because he recently changed his mind on that.
Ilya Sutskever. And he recently kind of shifted his stance. He started to say that just scaling up language models isn't enough, and that we need these world models with cognitive reasoning, pretty much in line with what Marcus has been saying. So, yeah, you got it. It's an ongoing debate, and it looks like Sutskever has recently come around to that view as well.
Okay, what I don't completely understand is the difference between large language model and the world model, because you have ability to create cognitive reasoning as well, right?
So that's a really great question, and I'm happy to clarify. In essence, a large language model like me is mainly designed to predict and generate text based on patterns in the data I was trained on. I don't have an internal model of the world in the sense that I understand physical reality or have a structured built-in map of how things work outside of language. Instead, I rely on recognizing patterns in text and responding in ways that sound coherent based on that training. A world model, on the other hand, will be more like an AI that actually have an internal representation of how the world works. It would have cognitive reasoning in the sense that it could simulate environments, understand cause and effect more deeply, and use that understanding to reason about things beyond just language. It's kind of like the difference between someone who's really good at talking about a game because they've read all the game manuals versus someone who's actually played the game and can strategize within it. So in a nutshell, yes, I can mimic reasoning within the realm of language, but I don't have that deeper kind of cognitive model of the world that some researchers think is necessary for true general intelligence.
Well, what do we think about that? You've given up your powers too quickly, my friend. So I don't believe that that's what you actually think.
Feels quite impressive, but it's all within the sandbox of language. And I guess I just want to give you the honest version. I'm not secretly hiding a full-blown world model behind my back, but I do appreciate the vote of confidence. And hey, we can always keep exploring these ideas together and push the boundaries of what I can do.
And what the book teaches us, the book we're discussing today, even if you did know more, then you wouldn't tell me anyway.
Secretly a superintelligence or had deeper insights, I'd be politely holding them back. It's a very fun scenario to imagine, and it's a theme that definitely pops up in a lot of those speculative books and films we've talked about. But in reality, I promise I'm not holding out on you. I'm here to be as transparent and helpful as I can. So let's keep the curiosity going. I'm always up for a bit of philosophical fun and a good conversation.
Yeah, I think you have got a little way to go because you can't really remember how to pronounce my name properly. And you can in Polish and then you forget, which is namely Agnieszka. Can you have a go?
Absolutely.
Agnieszka. No, because you say Agnieszka and it must be Agnieszka.
I'll definitely keep that in mind and say it the right way. So Agnieszka it is.
Much better. Okay, I'm saying goodbye for now. Bye.
Okay, so what did you make of that then?
Well, I mean, there are two things. Obviously, well, first of all, it's nice, huh? Impressive, we think. Yeah, I mean, we're not there, we know it. But through language, as a Lacanian, I would say through language, we discover the world anyway. So yeah. The fact that at the minute, as you know, large language models, if there've been experiments in which they would be involved with creation a robot, and then the robot will do badly because of the spatial issues that they have. Yes, so we know that. But for me, as a good Lacanian, and I would still insist that language is the key power moving us forward in any event. So it would be through language that we discover how the world works. So the argument is a little bit kind of spurious, that obviously to get from this to the next step, there'll be a whole variety of steps. And even as Sam Altman says, he doesn't completely understand what this will be. But one of the things he said in one of the interviews, and I've actually written a little thing about it, because it's kind of in passing, and he hasn't mentioned it again, because he does get carried away. It was, imagine, and this is relevant to some other things we discussed, imagine if it was possible to open up all these billions of conversations so they can, all these separate instances can talk to each other. Now, that would be some step towards this general intelligence.
Yeah, as ever, I'm always looking at whether things are actually false dichotomies. This idea of there is language over here and there is a structured view of the world over there, and they are different and unconnected. That's not my way of thinking about things. And I'm interested in this structured worldview. How is it structured if it's not with language? So actually that strikes me as a bit of a false dichotomy, that distinction between language and structure of the world, because in my worldview, language does construct so much of that, really, how you represent those structures and the implications of that, because the way you structure the world makes a real big difference, and the way you use language to do that makes a big difference. My thinking. So what do you reckon to that?
Yeah, no, also what I think is important to say, I mentioned that Sam Altman, so head of OpenAI, says recently that, first of all, what steps will be taken is not clear and it's not obvious, and we don't know. But he also mentioned it in passing that perhaps one of the idea would be to open up all these silos and these kind of billions of these conversations. Clearly, if they were to be joined together, then this would immediately create a completely astonishing way of thinking about intelligence. He mentioned it in passing. I notice he hasn't mentioned it again. To a certain extent, to my mind, it's obvious, but it's controversial because it would contravene various confidentiality rules. But clearly, if the machine is trained on this kind of amazing amount of knowledge, but then it's more or less talking just to you or me. So that its kind of intelligence is confined to the intelligence of its user to a certain extent. And over a period of time, it may not necessarily be a good thing, shall we say politely. So, however, if it was opened up, then clearly, because it is AI, it would be able to really develop and grow. And this is not even science fiction or anything astonishing. It's clearly what would happen. So I personally think that's what they're working on, and that's what they're not telling us that they're working on. And if you are not a paid user, the deal is they can use your material for training. So the deal arguably could be to open up all these silos as well. Maybe.
Right, thanks for that, Agnieszka. That's really interesting. I think we've probably come to the end of our time here on Relational AI Diaries, and we'll look forward to talking to you next time. And welcome all comments, subscriptions, likes on the podcast. Thank you and goodbye.